What if I told you that the single biggest reason you're not rich has absolutely nothing to do with how hard you work, how smart you are, or even how much money you make right now? What if the barrier between you and the life you actually want isn't out there in the world somewhere? What if it's in your head? And worse, what if you put it there yourself? Stay with me, because what you're about to hear is going to change the way you see money forever. Before we go any further, if this is the kind of content that makes you think differently, that challenges you, that gives you that uncomfortable feeling right in your chest because something just clicked, hit subscribe right now and tap that notification bell. I drop videos like this regularly, and I don't want you to miss the next one. The algorithm is not going to show you everything. So take 2 seconds, subscribe, and let's keep going. Because what I'm about to tell you is not something most people talk about openly. And by the end of this video, you're going to understand something about money that the majority of people walking this earth will never figure out. Not because they aren't smart enough, but because nobody ever sat them down and told them the truth. Here's the truth. There is an invisible wall between most people and financial freedom. You can't see it. You can't touch it, but you feel it every single day. You feel it when you're scared to invest. You feel it when you spend money on things you don't even really want just to feel something for a few hours. You feel it when a bill comes in and your stomach drops even though you technically have enough to cover it. You feel it when someone your age drives past you in a car you've always wanted, and instead of feeling motivated, you feel a weird mix of anger and shame that you don't fully understand. That wall, that feeling, that invisible force, that's your money mindset, and it is either the engine that's going to drive you forward or it is the anchor that is quietly, invisibly, mercilessly holding you down. Now, before you think this is just another feel-good video about thinking positive and abundance and the law of attraction and all that stuff, it's not. We're going way deeper than that. We're going to talk about the actual psychology, the neuroscience, the real life stories, and the brutal honest truths that most financial gurus are too polished and too careful to actually say. So buckle in. This is going to take a minute, and every single minute is going to be worth it. Let me start with a story. His name was Marcus, and Marcus was the kind of guy who, on paper, should have been fine. He worked a decent job. He wasn't reckless with money. He didn't gamble. He didn't blow thousands on stupid stuff. He was, by almost every measure, responsible. And yet, at 34 years old, Marcus had nothing saved. No investments. No property. Just a checking account that seemed to reset to zero every single month, no matter how many hours he worked. And Marcus couldn't figure out why. He'd read a few personal finance books. He knew what a budget was. He understood, intellectually, that he should be saving and investing. But something kept stopping him. Some invisible force kept pulling his hands away from the controls every time he got close. And the most terrifying part, he didn't even know it was happening. That story sounds familiar to more people than will ever admit it. And the reason Marcus was stuck isn't what you think. Let's rewind. Way back. Because to understand why you're where you are with money right now, we have to go back to a place most people never go. We have to go back to before you even had an opinion about money. We have to go back to when you were a kid, sitting at a kitchen table, listening without meaning to, absorbing without realizing, learning without anyone ever intending to teach you. Here's something that took neuroscientists and behavioral economists decades to figure out, but that a lot of people still haven't heard. Most of your core beliefs about money were formed before you turned 7 years old. 7. You didn't choose those beliefs. You didn't evaluate them. You didn't weigh the evidence and decide what to think. You just absorbed them like a sponge, because that's literally what young human brains do. They observe the world around them and they build a model, a framework, a blueprint. And that blueprint runs in the background of your mind for the rest of your life, unless someone helps you see it and consciously rewrite it. So what was the blueprint your house built? What were the conversations you overheard between your parents? What was the attitude in your home toward money? Was money talked about openly, practically, as a tool? Or was it something that caused tension, stress, arguments, shame? Was there a belief in your household that rich people were greedy, corrupt, or lucky? Was there an underlying idea that wanting more was somehow selfish or ungrateful? Did you grow up hearing things like, money doesn't grow on trees, and we can't afford that, and rich people are different from us? Or maybe nobody talked about money at all, which communicates its own very powerful message that money is something to be feared or avoided or not examined too closely. None of those things are your parents' fault. They were passing on what they received. Their blueprints were built by the people who raised them. And those people built their blueprints from the people who raised them. This goes back generations. In some families, financial trauma goes back to events that happened before anyone alive today was even born. The Great Depression left psychological imprints on entire generational lines that researchers are still studying today. The experience of poverty, of genuine scarcity, can wire a brain so profoundly that the effects show up in the behavior of people who never experienced that scarcity themselves. You might be operating on emotional software that was written by your grandparents' pain, and you don't even know it. That's the invisible barrier. Right there. That's it. It's not the economy. It's not your job. It's not your income level. It is the programming that was installed in your mind before you were old enough to question it, running silently in the background, making decisions for you that feel like logical choices, but are actually just emotional reflexes. And here's where it gets really uncomfortable. Because once I show you a few of the ways this programming shows up in everyday behavior, you are not going to be able to unsee it. You're going to recognize yourself in at least one of these, maybe all of them. And that moment of recognition is the beginning of everything changing. The first pattern is what psychologists call the scarcity mindset. This one runs deep. The scarcity mindset is the belief, often completely unconscious, that there isn't enough, that resources are limited, that if someone else wins, you lose, that the world is a zero-sum game where abundance for one person means lack for another. People with a scarcity mindset hoard. They panic. They make short-term decisions that hurt them long-term, because the fear of losing what they have right now overrides any rational thinking about the future. They see a sale and they buy things they don't need because the idea of missing out on a deal triggers something ancient and primal in their nervous system. They underprice their services because deep down they're terrified that if they charge what they're worth, nobody will pay it. They stay in jobs they hate because the known discomfort feels safer than the unknown possibility of something better. Now here's the twist on the scarcity mindset that almost nobody talks about. It doesn't just show up in people who grew up poor. It shows up in people who grew up in households that felt financially unstable even if they were technically middle class. It shows up in people whose parents fought about money even when there was enough. Because the scarcity mindset isn't about how much money there actually was. It's about how money made you feel when you were growing up. And if money made you feel scared or ashamed or like it was a source of constant conflict, then your brain filed money under the category of dangerous thing. and your nervous system has been treating it that way ever since. The second pattern is the opposite of scarcity and somehow just as destructive. It's called self-sabotage through overspending, and it is the most misunderstood financial behavior out there. When most people overspend, they assume the problem is a lack of willpower or discipline. They think they just love things too much, or they're bad with money, or they're somehow fundamentally flawed. But here's what's actually happening in a large percentage of cases. Overspending is an emotional regulation strategy. It is your nervous system's attempt to create a feeling of control, comfort, or reward in a situation where it feels like those things are in short supply. When you're stressed and you buy something, there's a real neurological hit of dopamine, a real, measurable feeling of relief. The purchase is not about the item. The purchase is about the feeling. And the craving for that feeling is driven by something that happened long before you had a credit card. People who grew up in environments where they felt emotionally unsafe, unloved, or uncertain often develop this pattern. The spending becomes a surrogate for the comfort and safety they didn't get to experience consistently as children. And this is why telling someone to just stop spending is like telling someone with depression to just be happy. You can say it all you want, but until you address the underlying emotional driver, the behavior is going to persist. Because the behavior is not the problem, it's the symptom. Marcus, the guy from our story earlier, was in this camp. Every time he had a good amount saved up, something would happen. He'd have a bad week at work, or a conflict with someone he cared about, or he'd just feel that low-level, quiet, hard-to-name kind of pain that a lot of people carry around, and the relief valve was spending. Sometimes big purchases, sometimes just constant small ones that added up. And the brutal part is that Marcus genuinely didn't understand what he was doing until someone helped him see it. He thought he just liked nice things. He thought he just wasn't disciplined enough. He had no idea he was medicating an emotion. Now let's talk about the third pattern. And this one is going to sting a little for some people watching this. It's called the upper limit problem, and it was coined by a psychologist named Gay Hendricks. And once you understand it, you are going to see it everywhere. Here's the concept. Every person has an internal thermostat for how much success, happiness, and wealth they believe they deserve. When their actual life rises above that internal setting, their subconscious mind kicks in and self-destructs, not because they want to fail, but because success above a certain point feels unfamiliar. And the brain, more than almost anything else, craves the familiar. The familiar is safe. The unfamiliar, even when it's objectively better, triggers the alarm system. So what does upper limiting look like with money? It looks like getting a bonus or a windfall and immediately finding a way to spend it, lose it, or give it away until you're back at the level that feels normal. It looks like starting a business that's genuinely taking off and then unconsciously doing something to slow it down. Picking a fight with a partner, developing a health issue from stress, losing focus for no apparent reason. It looks like landing a high-paying job and then suddenly starting to perform poorly, almost as if you're trying to get yourself back to where you started. All of this sounds insane from the outside, but from the inside, it doesn't feel like self-sabotage. It feels like bad luck. It feels like the universe is against you. It feels like you just can't catch a break. Because the last thing your subconscious is going to do is announce to you what it's doing. It's sneaky. It's invisible. That's literally the definition of the word subconscious. So why do people have low internal thermostats for wealth? Sometimes it's because of explicit messages they received as children. People like us don't get rich. Money changes people. You're not smart enough for that. Sometimes it's because of an unconscious loyalty to their family system. If everyone in your family struggled financially, getting wealthy can feel like a betrayal on a level so deep it's almost impossible to articulate. Like you're abandoning your people. Like you're saying you're better than them. And for many people, that feeling is so unbearable that they will unconsciously destroy their own success rather than feel the guilt of leaving the tribe behind. This is not rational. But here's the thing. Money decisions are almost never rational. And the sooner you understand that, the sooner you can actually do something about it. Let me pause here for a second and ask you a direct question. And I want you to actually sit with this one. When you imagine yourself genuinely wealthy, with financial freedom, with options and security and abundance, how does that actually feel in your body? Not what do you think about it? How does it feel? Because if the honest answer is that it feels uncomfortable, foreign, almost dangerous, or like it could never really happen for you, that's data. That's your internal thermostat telling you exactly what it's set to. And that number, that setting is absolutely changeable, but only once you see it. Now we need to talk about something that sits right at the intersection of psychology and practical finance. Because none of this mindset work matters if we don't also connect it to real behaviors, real decisions, real money. So let's talk about what the data actually says about how people build and destroy wealth. There is a famous book called The Millionaire Next Door by Thomas Stanley and William Danko. If you haven't read it, the short version is this: the researchers studied actual millionaires in America, not the celebrities, not the inherited wealth crowd, but the everyday millionaires who built their wealth from the ground up. And what they found shattered almost every assumption about what rich people look like. The average self-made millionaire in their study drove a used car, lived in a modest house in a normal neighborhood, had been married to the same person for decades, didn't own a boat, didn't take exotic vacations, was not trying to look wealthy, was not trying to impress anyone, and had been quietly, consistently, boringly investing a portion of their income for decades. Meanwhile, the people with the highest incomes, the ones who looked the wealthiest, the ones with the flashy cars and the designer clothes and the big houses, those people, statistically, had very little actual wealth. They had high incomes and high expenses and almost nothing in between. They were, in the language of the book, high income, low wealth individuals. They were running very fast to stay exactly in place. So what separates those two groups? It's not income, it's not intelligence, it's not even luck mostly. It is the beliefs and habits and emotional relationship with money that determines whether the money that flows into your life stays and grows or evaporates every single month. It is, at its core, a mindset difference. And here's the part that nobody in the personal finance space wants to say directly, because it makes people uncomfortable. The habits and behaviors of wealthy people are almost always boring. They are unglamorous. They are not the stuff of great Instagram content. They involve saying no a lot. They involve delayed gratification on a scale that are dopamine saturated, social, media, addicted, instant, everything culture has almost completely lost the capacity for. They involve sitting with discomfort, the discomfort of not buying the thing, not upgrading the thing, not showing up to the thing, for years, sometimes decades. And why do most people choose the flashy, feel good, visually impressive version of financial behavior over the boring, effective, real version? Because of social comparison, because of status anxiety, because of that deeply human, deeply primal need to be seen as enough, as worthy, as someone who matters. And in a culture that has, for generations, equated net worth with self-worth, the temptation to perform wealth rather than build it is overwhelming. It is baked into the air we breathe. Let me tell you about another person. Her name was Diana. And Diana grew up in a family that, while not wealthy, was always put together. Her mother wore nice clothes. Her father drove a respectable car. The house was always tidy, always presentable. The message Diana received, without anyone ever saying it out loud, was that appearances matter. That how things look is how you communicate your value to the world. That slipping in the appearance of success, even for a moment, was a kind of failure. So Diana, who was genuinely hardworking and talented, entered adult life with an almost compulsive need to look successful, even before she was. Every raise she got went toward looking the part, every bonus became a wardrobe, every promotion triggered a bigger apartment, even when the old one was perfectly fine. Diana wasn't dumb. She knew, logically, that she wasn't building wealth. But the anxiety of looking like she wasn't doing well was more powerful than the logic. And nobody around her was pushing back, because to everyone else, Diana looked great, looked successful. And in our culture that buys you an enormous amount of social grace, nobody ever sat Diana down and said, "Hey, you look amazing, and your net worth is terrifying." Because that's not a conversation people have. Diana's turning point came not from a book or a podcast. It came from a moment of raw, quiet honesty. She was at a colleague's retirement party. This colleague, a woman who had been at the company for 30 years, who wore sensible shoes and drove a Honda Accord and brought her lunch to work almost every single day, this woman pulled Diana aside and said something Diana never forgot. She said, "I never looked rich, honey, but I am." And then she laughed gently, kindly, and in that moment something cracked open in Diana, because Diana understood, for the first time with her whole body, rather than just her head, that she had been playing the wrong game. She had been winning at looking wealthy, and losing at being wealthy. And she had been so inside the looking that she had never once stopped to ask whether it was working. That kind of moment, that kind of crack, is what most people need before real change becomes possible. Not more information, not a better budget template. A crack in the story they've been telling themselves about what money is for and what it says about them. Let's talk about that story for a minute. The story you tell yourself about money. Because everyone has one. And the story is the thing. The practical stuff, the budgets and the investment accounts, and the emergency funds, all of that is downstream of the story. Fix the story, and the practical stuff becomes almost natural. Leave the story broken, and you will defeat every practical system you try to put in place every single time. So what are the most common broken money stories? Let's go through them. The first one is, "I'm just not a money person." This is one of the most disabling beliefs out there, because it frames financial incompetence as an identity rather than a skill. Nobody is born a money person. Financial literacy is learned. It is a skill set. It can be developed by anyone at any point in their life. But the moment you turn, "I haven't learned this yet," into, "I'm just not that kind of person," you close the door on ever changing it. You make a permanent statement out of a temporary condition. And your brain, which is always trying to be consistent with your identity, will dutifully work to prove you right at every opportunity. The second broken story is, "Rich people are greedy or corrupt or evil." This one is fascinating because it feels like it's about other people, but it's actually about you. If you genuinely believe, on some level, that wealth is associated with moral failure, then your subconscious mind is going to protect you from becoming that thing, because you are a good person. And good people don't become the thing that is associated with greed and corruption. So every time you start to accumulate money, something in you will find a reason to redistribute it. Not out of generosity, necessarily. Out of fear. fear of becoming the villain in your own story. If this resonates, the work is not just around money. It's around re-examining the narrative you've built about what wealthy people are actually like, whether that narrative is accurate, and whether there are equally compelling examples of wealthy people who are generous, community-oriented, and deeply ethical. Because there are plenty of them, and the existence of corrupt, rich people does not mean that wealth itself is corrupt. Money is a tool. It amplifies what's already there. It makes generous people more generous and selfish people more selfish. It is not, in itself, a moral category. The third broken story, and I think this might be the most widespread and the most damaging, is, I don't deserve it. Not everyone says it this way. Some people say it as, it'll never happen for me, or people like me don't get wealthy, or I'll believe it when I see it. But at the core, it's the same thing. A deep, embedded, often pre-verbal belief that financial abundance is meant for other people. That there is some category of people for whom wealth is possible, and that you are, for reasons you can't quite articulate, not in that category. This belief often lives in the body more than in the mind. It's not something people can easily argue their way out of, because it wasn't installed through logic. It was installed through repeated experience, repeated observation, repeated messages received in environments where nobody thought they were sending them. And the only way to uproot a belief that was installed non-verbally is to do some work that is also non-verbal. That might be therapy. That might be somatic practice. That might be meditation. That might be deep, sustained community with people who think differently about money. It's different for different people, but it requires going below the surface of the practical and into the territory of the emotional and the psychological. And most personal finance advice never goes there, which is why most personal finance advice doesn't actually change anything. Here's a question I want you to sit with. And this is the question that Marcus eventually had to answer. And Diana, and everyone else who has ever broken through their invisible barrier. The question is this: what would you have to believe about yourself to actually become financially free? Not what would you have to do. Not what tactics would you have to execute. What would you have to believe? Because most people approach this backwards. They think, if I just learn the right strategy, if I just find the right investment, if I just get the right information, then I'll be set. But that's not how human psychology works. People take actions that are consistent with their identities and their beliefs. Not the other way around. The belief has to come first, or at minimum, the belief has to shift simultaneously with the behavior. Otherwise, you're swimming upstream against yourself, and the current will eventually win. This is why lottery winners, and this is documented and studied and widely reported, a shockingly high percentage of people who win the lottery are broke within 5 years. Not because they're stupid, not because they got unlucky, but because they received an enormous amount of money without any corresponding shift in their internal beliefs about what they deserved, what was normal, what felt right, and so, with perfect efficiency, their subconscious mind returned them to their set point. It found ways to spend, to give away, to lose, to be taken advantage of, until the bank account matched the internal belief once more. The internal thermostat wins, every single time, until you change the thermostat. So how do you change it? This is the practical part, and I want to be clear, this is not a 5-step system. This is not a hack, this is real work. It takes time, it is worth it. Here's where you start. Step 1. You make the invisible visible. You sit down, not with a spreadsheet, but with a journal or a blank page, and you write out your honest beliefs about money. Not what you think you should believe, what you actually believe. What does a part of you, even the irrational part. Think about wealthy people. What did money mean in your home growing up? What were you told explicitly or implicitly? What feelings come up when you think about having a lot of money? What feelings come up when you think about spending? When you think about investing, about taking financial risks? You write all of it down, raw, unfiltered, and then you look at it. Because you cannot change what you cannot see, step 2, you challenge the stories. For every belief you uncovered in step 1, you ask, is this actually true? Not just does it feel true? Does the evidence actually support it? If you believe rich people are bad, can you find examples that contradict that? If you believe you're not smart enough to invest, can you find evidence that ordinary people with no special financial training have built real wealth through simple, consistent habits? If you believe that wanting more is selfish, can you find examples of wealthy people who have done enormous good with their resources? The goal is not to replace false beliefs with forced positivity. The goal is to loosen the grip of beliefs that are simply not accurate and have been operating as though they were facts. Step 3. You find new models. This is huge. The people around you shape what feels possible and normal to you more than almost anything else. If everyone in your immediate circle has a similar financial situation to yours, your brain is quietly receiving the message that that's just how it is. That's just what people like you do. That's the ceiling. Expanding your circle physically, through community and relationships, or virtually, through books and podcasts and content, to include people who think differently about money, who have broken through their own invisible barriers, is one of the most powerful things you can do. Not to compare yourself to them, not to feel bad about where you are, but to update your brain's model of what is possible for someone who is human with their own fears and limitations and history. Because the brain learns a lot by example. Give it better examples. Step 4. You take small, consistent action that builds identity. This one is quietly transformative. Instead of trying to overhaul everything at once, you take one small action in the direction of the financial life you want. You automate a $20 transfer to savings. You open the investment account even if you don't put money in it yet. You read one page of a personal finance book. You track your spending for 1 week. Not because these actions will change your financial picture immediately, but because each action you take that is consistent with the identity of person who handles money well slightly shifts how you see yourself. And over time, those small shifts compound into a new identity, and the new identity changes the behavior on a level that no amount of external motivation ever could. Step 5, and this is the one people resist most, you get help. Not financial advice, necessarily, though that's useful too, but real, actual help dealing with the emotional and psychological dimensions of your money story. A therapist, a coach, a deeply honest conversation with someone you trust, because so much of what runs our financial behavior is buried, and the buried stuff is notoriously hard to excavate alone. It's hard to see your own blind spots precisely because they're blind spots. You need someone outside your own head to help you see the things you can't see about yourself. This is not weakness, this is strategy. The wealthiest, most successful people in the world almost universally have coaches, mentors, therapists, or some other form of external thinking partner, not because they're broken, because they understand that their biggest limitations are in the parts of themselves they can't directly observe. Now let me bring it all back to Marcus, because his story has an ending. After years of that mysterious reset to zero, Marcus eventually ended up in a situation where he was forced to look honestly at his patterns. He didn't go to therapy voluntarily. It was part of a process that his employer offered, and he almost didn't go. But he went. And over several sessions, with someone helping him trace the thread backward, Marcus discovered something that shocked him. His father had been a deeply talented, entrepreneurial man who had tried and failed multiple times to build a business. And in the aftermath of each failure, there was shame, tension, withdrawal. And young Marcus had watched all of this. And somewhere in his developing brain, a connection had been made. A story had been written. The story was, when men like us try to build something, we fail. And failure is humiliating. And humiliation is unbearable. So the safest thing to do is never really try. And the safest thing to do with money is never really accumulate enough of it to have something real to lose. Marcus wasn't consciously thinking any of this. He wasn't telling himself this story in words he could hear. It was running silently underneath everything he did, until he could see it. It didn't fix everything overnight, but it cracked open the door, and Marcus walked through it slowly, imperfectly. But forward, within 3 years, Marcus had his first real investment account. He had a small emergency fund that had never been raided. He had a side project that was generating modest income. None of this was dramatic. None of it looked like the success stories you see on social media. But it was real. And for Marcus, it was everything. Because he understood that what he had changed was not his bank account. He had changed his story. He had rewritten the program. And the bank account was just the downstream effect of that. I want to say something directly to you now. Because this isn't just a story about Marcus and Diana and lottery winners and behavioral economists. This is about you. This video exists because there is something specific you were meant to hear in it. Maybe it's the scarcity mindset thing. Maybe it's the upper limit pattern. Maybe it's the identity piece. Maybe it's simply the permission to take the emotional and psychological dimensions of your relationship with money as seriously as the practical ones. Whatever it is, you know what hit you. You felt it in your chest or your gut or somewhere in your body that registers truth before your brain has time to defend against it. That feeling is the signal. Pay attention to it. Financial freedom is not a destination reserved for people who were born into the right circumstances or who have some magical quality that you lack. It is the natural result of believing that it's possible, building a relationship with money that is honest rather than fearful, and taking consistent action aligned with that belief over time. That's it. That's the whole formula. It is devastatingly simple. It is genuinely difficult. And it is absolutely available to you. The invisible barrier is real, but it is not permanent. It is not structural. It is not part of the universe's plan for you. It is a story, and stories can be rewritten. The biggest lie that financial culture sells us is that the barrier is outside of us, that it's the market or the economy or your income or your starting point or your zip code. And while those things are real, and systemic inequality is real, and some people genuinely face harder circumstances than others, for the vast majority of the people watching this right now, the primary barrier is not out there. It's in here. And the moment you accept that, not as a shame statement, not as a judgment, but as a fact that actually gives you power, everything changes. Because if the barrier is inside you, then you have access to it. And if you have access to it, you can change it. And if you can change it, there is absolutely no reason why the financial life you want is not possible for you. Now here's where I want to leave you. And this is the part I want you to actually think about after the video ends. Not just absorb and move on. Actually think about, what is your money story? Not the one you'd tell someone at a dinner party. The real one. The one running in the background, the one that explains why you do what you do with money, even when you know what you're supposed to do instead. What did you learn about money before you were old enough to choose what to learn? What does money mean to you, emotionally, beneath all the spreadsheets and all the advice? What are you afraid of when it comes to money, not in a vague way, but specifically? And most importantly, what kind of story would you have to be living to feel financially safe and free? And what's standing between where you are and that story? You don't have to have all the answers right now. The fact that you're asking the questions is enough to start. The questions are the beginning of the rewrite. Let me say one more thing before we wrap up. There's a reason most people never get there, and it's not the reason you think. It's not lack of information. Information has never been more accessible in the history of humanity than it is right now. The internet has more financial wisdom on it than any library could hold. It is not lack of information. It is not lack of desire. Everyone wants financial freedom. As long as we keep talking about budgets and investing strategies and side hustle ideas, without ever stopping to ask why people self-sabotage even when they know the right moves, we will keep producing the same results. The conversation has to go deeper. And I hope this video was a step in that direction for you. The invisible barrier is named. It is your money mindset, the invisible, emotionally loaded, often generationally inherited set of beliefs about what money is, what it means, who deserves it, and what it would mean about you to have it. Seeing it clearly is the first move. Challenging it honestly is the second. Building a new identity slowly and consistently is the third. And getting help along the way is not optional, it's the accelerator. You are not too old. You are not too far behind. You have not made too many mistakes. Every person you admire who has built real, lasting financial freedom started exactly where you are, with a gap between where they were and where they wanted to be, and the decision to stop letting an invisible story run their financial life. That decision is available to you right now. In this moment, with whatever you've got. Now, here's what I want you to do in the comments right now. I want you to be honest with me. Just one sentence. What is one belief about money that you grew up with that you're now starting to question? It doesn't have to be profound. It doesn't have to be polished. Just one honest sentence about one belief that this video made you look at differently. Drop it below. Because I read these. And I promise you, reading the comments on a video like this is one of the most powerful things you can experience as a person working on your own money story. You will see your own beliefs reflected in other people's words and suddenly realize how universal and how constructed they are. That realization alone can begin to set you free. If this video landed for you, if it cracked something open, if it said something you've been needing to hear, if it gave language to a feeling you've had for years but couldn't name, send it to someone. Not as a dig, not as a hint. Send it to your best friend who you know is brilliant and capable and somehow stuck. Send it to your sibling. Send it to the person in your life who you wish would see their own potential as clearly as you see it. Sometimes the most generous thing you can do for someone is hand them a mirror in the right shape. This video might be that for someone in your life, and if you're not subscribed yet, what are you doing? Tap that subscribe button, hit the bell. Because I make videos that go places most channels won't go, that ask questions most people are too comfortable to ask, and that trust you, the person watching, to be smart enough and courageous enough to do something real with the answers. I want you in this community. Hit subscribe. I'll see you in the next one. the barrier was always invisible. Now it's not. What you do next is entirely up to you.